Very interesting Masechta involving halachas of Yantav and Chol Hamoed. Beitzah should know to be Yantav. You have an egg that was born on Yantav. Beis Shammai oimrim te'achel. Beis Shammai says you're allowed to eat it that day. Beis Hillel oimrim lo se'achel. Beis Hillel says no. Now, this is a kula of Beis Shammai, right? We know that normally Beis Shammai is more machmir than Beis Hillel. But here, if Beis Shammai is allowing you to eat an egg on Yantav that's born on Yantav, that's a kula. So because the Tana of the Mishna notices that this is a kula of Beis Shammai, he's going to mention other halachos, not all of them, but he's going to mention other halachos of Beis Shammai that are also a kula. Beis Shammai oimrim, so'or b'kazayis, v'chametz b'kakoseves. On Pesach, the shear to give you kores. So so'or is dough that's very fermented, that's used as a starter dough to start fermenting other doughs. So such a dough needs a kazayas. But chametz, regular chametz, is a larger shear, b'kakoseves. Before you get, it's the size of a date, which is larger than a kazayas. So again, Beis Shammai are mekel. You don't get kores unless you eat a date worth of chametz. Beis Hillel oimrim zev v'zeh b'kazayas. Another example of kula of Beis Shammai. Another kula. Hashoichet chaya v'of b'yontiv. The din is if you shecht a chaya or a bird, there's a chiyuv of kisui adam. If you shecht a behema, there is no kisui adam. But a chayanof requires kisui adam. So, but let's say you shechted on Yantav. You're allowed to shecht on Yantav, lo oichel nefesh. So, Beis Shammai oimrim yachpor b'deker v'chaseh. Beis Shammai allows you to take like a stick and dig to cover the dam. Beis Hillel oimrim lo yishchot elim ken hayalo offer muchen mibad yom. Beis Hillel says you're not allowed to shecht unless you had prepared dirt from before Yantav to cover the blood for kisui adam. Umoidim, they grishim shachat, that b'di'eved lechatchila you shouldn't do it, but if b'di'eved you shechted sheyachpor b'deker v'chaseh, that you can dig around to get some dirt. She'efer kira muchanhu, because the ash of an oven is already considered muchan. And the Gemara will explain this sugya a little bit more carefully. So let's go back to the case of the Beitzah. B'may askinan. What case are we talking about? So is this an eating chicken, meaning a chicken that's been designated that we're going to shecht it and eat it? It's not an egg-laying chicken, a chicken that's meant to stay alive to lay eggs. Let's say it's a chicken that's been designated to eat. So we don't understand my tamai to Beis Hillel. Why should Beis Hillel not allow you to eat the egg that the chicken laid on Yantav? Uchla de ifrasu. I mean, it's oichel that's separated from the tarnagolas. I mean, just like you can eat the tarnagol, you can eat the egg. What's the difference? Must be ella the tarnagolas are menes legadol beitzim. So we're talking about a chicken that is already muchan for it's set aside to lay eggs. So then the shaila is, my tamai to Beis Shammai, why would Beis Shammai though allow you to eat the egg? It's muktzah. It's going to be muktzah because of the concept it wasn't specifically designated. So My kushya. What kind of kasha is that? Dilma Beishamai Leslu Muktzah. We know there's a famous machlokas throughout Masechta Shabbos between Rav Shimon and Rav Yehuda, whether Islay Muktzah or Leslie Muktzah. Maybe Beishamai holds there's no muktzah. If there's no muktzah, there's no problem with the egg. Kasal kedaitin, afilu man deshoy b'muktzah b'noilad osar. The havamina here is that even though Rab Shimon might not hold of muktzah, but when it comes to the specific muktzah of noilad, noilad is something which didn't exist before, now it exists. Even those man de'omrim that don't hold of muktzah, but of noilad they will hold. So then, even though you might say Beis Shammai holds like those tanoim that don't hold of muktzah, but even those tanoim hold that noilad is osir. So we're back to the question: my tamai de Beis Shammai, who allowed you to use the egg born on Yantav. So we have a number of tirutzim of this shaila. Amar Rav Nachman. We are talking about la'olam b'tar nagadas ha'emedes lagadol beitzim. We are dealing with a chicken designated to lay eggs. The Islay Muktzah, Islay Noilad. And he holds of Muktzah, and therefore he holds of Noilad. Oh, excuse me. Those that hold of Muktzah hold of Noilad. Ude Leslie Muktzah, Leslie Noilad. So Rav Nachman holds that it's an equation. If you don't hold of Muktzah, you don't hold of Noilad. So if you don't hold, and so Beis Shammai, they're going to say, holds like the opinion that there's no muktzah, and therefore there's no noilad. Comes out Beis Shammai Reb Shimon, right? Reb Shimon is the Tana throughout Masechta Shabbos who does not hold of muktzah. Ubeis Hillel Rab Yehuda. That's what's coming out the way we're learning our Mishnah. Ask the Gemara, Miyom Rav Nachman Hachi? Did Rav Nachman say this? Batnan. Beis Shammai oimrim. Magbiyin me'al hashulchan atzamos uklipin. On Shabbos, if you've eaten on a table, and there's all sorts of shells after the Suda, and they're not roy lachila, they're muktzah, you're allowed to remove them. You can't touch the shells. You got to pick the table up, shake the table, and they fall off by themselves. The Amar of Nachman on this Mishnah, you got your opinions wrong. Beis Shammai is the one who holds Rabbi Yehuda that it's muktzah and you wouldn't be able to touch the klipas themselves, and it's Beis Hillel who holds like Rab Shimon that you can touch them directly. So we see Rav Nachman himself cannot hold that Beis Shammai holds like Rab Shimon. He has said beferish that he holds like Rab Yehuda. So Amar Lecha Rav Nachman, Gabi Shabbos, Disosum Lan Tanak Rab Shimon. When it comes to the sugi of Shabbos, where we have a stam anonymous Mishnah like Rav Shimon, this nan that if an animal dies on Shabbos, becomes a nevela, and therefore it was not prepared from before Shabbos, you're still allowed to cut them up and feed them to the dogs. Obviously, this Mishnah doesn't hold of muktzah. It's the sheet of Rab Shimon. So since there's a stam Mishnah in Masechta Shabbos that is of the opinion of Rab Shimon of no muktzah, mukim lo beis Hillel, Rab Shimon. Beis Hillel regarding Shabbos will hold like Reb Shimon. Aval Gabi Yantav. But when we get into the sugi of Yantav, this Sosum Lon Tanek Rabbi Yehuda. Here we have an anonymous, unnamed Mishnah, which is an authoritative Mishnah. Those Mishnahs usually are Mishnahs that were collected by Rabbi Yehuda Nossi. And it's like Rabbi Yehuda Snan. Ein mevakim eitzim en hakoyros, v'lo men hakor shenishba b'yontiv. Let's say there was a beam in a house, or there was a piece of lumber that was set aside for construction. So you're not allowed to chop that beam up to use for firewood because of Isser Muktzah, which is like Rav Yehuda. And this is an unnamed Mishnah. So we have an unnamed Mishnah in the Sugi of Yantiv, like Rav Yehuda. So therefore, Mukim Lala Beis Hillel, Rav Yehuda. So regarding Yantiv, Beis Hillel will hold like Rav Yehuda regarding Muktzah. So the Gemara says, Mechte, let's see. Man stame lemasnisim. Who is the person who authored these Mishnayos and kept them anonymous? Rebbe. Now, Mishna b'Shabbos, the Sosum Lon Reb Shimon, u'Mishna b'Yantav, the Sosum Lon Reb Yehuda. I mean, why did Rebbe switch shitas? How come when it comes to Shabbos, he authored a Mishnah like Reb Shimon, but when it comes to Yantav, he authored it like Reb Yehuda? What's going on here? Amri, that we have an answer for. Shabbos, the Chamira. Shabbos, which is very stringent. There's Kores, and there's Misa, Misa's Bezdin. That's how Chomer Shabbos is. Therefore, Lo Asi Lizulzuliba. Therefore, people are not going to come to B'Mizalzel Dinim of Shabbos because it's so strict. Sosam Lon Reb Shimon Demekel. He felt okay bringing down the Mishnah like Reb Shimon, who was Mekel regarding Muktzah on Shabbos. Yantav the kill. Yantav, which is more lenient. There's no Kores. There's no Misas Bidei Bezdin. Asi Lezulzuli Bey. Sosam Lon Rav Yehuda de Machmir. So there he felt it was important to hold like Rabbi Yehuda regarding Muktzah to be more Machmir. Okay. So let's go back to our Mishnah. B'mayu Kimta. How did you set up our Mishnah? We set it up that we're talking about a chicken that has been set aside for beitzim, not to eat. And therefore, if such an animal lays an egg, the egg is muktzah. So that's why Beis Hillel does not allow it, but Beis Shammai does because it doesn't hold of muktzah. However, why did you have to make the machloikas that he laid an egg? Have the machloikas regarding eating the chicken. Even though it's been designated to lay eggs, well, according to Beis Shammai, if there's no muktzah, you're allowed to eat the chicken. And according to Beis Hillel, you wouldn't. But the machloikas could have been about the chicken. It didn't have to be about the egg. So why, Freik the Gemara, was it set up about the egg? It could have been about the chicken. And for the Gemara, remember we had a discussion earlier tonight that we wanted to, we said that even those people who don't hold muktzah, but noilid they will hold. Well, we show that that's not the case. That Beis Shammai goes so far to say that not only is there not muktzah by a chicken that you designated, but even a noilid kind of muktzah, something that didn't even exist before Shabbos and now exists, he still considers noilid not to be a muktzah and would be permitted. So that's a huge chiddush lehetera. And that's why they argued about the egg and not about the chicken, because the chicken is not noilid. So the Gemara says, well, you could still have the machlokes regarding the chicken to show you how far Beis Hillel goes. that he prohibits muktzah. And maybe you'll tell me the reason why they didn't do that. Because Chazal always wanted to strengthen koyach of heter. Well, you could have had it both ways. V'niflig b'tervayu. You could have argued tarna goyles ha'omedes l'gadol beitzim. He ubeitzasa. You could have formulated it, the chicken and the egg that it laid. Beishamai oimrim te'achel, ubeisel oimrim lo te'achel. And you would have had everybody, you would have had koyach te'hetera, and you would have shown how far Beis Hillel goes regarding muktzah. Good kasha. So now the Gemara goes back to the drawing board. We're back that the chicken is a chicken that was designated to be eaten. Well, then therefore all parts of the chicken can be eaten, even if it's egg. So that's clearly why Beis Shammai allows you to eat the egg. The question would be, why does Beis Hillel prohibit you from eating the egg if the chicken had been designated for eating? The Gemara says, "Of Yantav shechaliyos achar haShabbos askina." We're talking about when Yantav falls on a Sunday, and the problem is hachana, that you're not allowed to be mechin Shabbos for Yantav. Why? Because Ksaver Rabbah, Kol beitza de misyalda ha'idna me'etmol gamrala. An egg that was born today was finished yesterday. It's always born a day after it's finished. Just has to come out. But really the beitza was done before. And therefore, the reason you can't eat a beitza late on Sunday is because it was finished on Shabbos. Since it was finished on Shabbos, you're mechin from Shabbos to Yantav, which we're not allowed to do. The Rabba L'tamei, the Omer Rabba, my dichsiv, it says, Vayaba Yom HaShishi, Vehechinu es asher yaviu. When Friday comes around, they have to be mechin for Shabbos. And it teaches us, Chol mechin l'Shabbos, the Chol mechin l'Yontav. A weekday, you can prepare for Shabbos on a weekday, and you can prepare on a weekday for Yantav. Ve'en Yantav mechin l'Shabbos. You cannot be mechin on Yantav for Shabbos. That's why we do an Eruv Tafshilin prior to Yantav, because the Eruv is done, let's say, on Chol, and all the preparations you've done is for Chol, for Yantav and Shabbos, because you can't prepare on Yantav for Shabbos. And in Shabbos, mechin l'Yantav. Armalei Abaya, Elameata Yom Tov Ba'alma Tishtari. Well, why, according to the way you're learning now, any egg born on Yom Tov really got finished the day before, and on Chol, so you should be able to eat the egg on Yom Tov. The only reason we don't, Gzeira Mishum Yom Tov Achar HaShabbos. The only reason, even if a Yantav falls on a Thursday and it was making from Wednesday and technically you can eat it, we don't allow you to eat it on a Thursday because you'll forget. And when Yantav falls on a Sunday, you'll eat it too. But then it's a problem because the egg was muchan from Shabbos. So it's a gzeira. Freit the Gemara Shabbos da alma tishtari. For the same reason, if a egg is laid on Shabbos, we should be able to eat it because it was muchan from Friday. Gzeira mishum Shabbos achar Yantav. Technically, mikra din, you could eat it on Shabbos. The reason we don't is because if we allow you to eat it on a regular Shabbos, you'll come to eat it on a Shabbos after a Friday when Friday was Yantav, and which is a problem because Yantav cannot be mechin l'Shabbos. Freit the Gemara, Omi Gazrinan? Do we make such a gzeira? V'hatanya, hashoichet esar tenegolas. You shecht on Yantav a chicken. Umatza b'beitzim gemuros. Inside the female chicken You found a whole bunch of eggs in their shells. They just weren't laid yet. Mutaras la'achon b'yontiv. You're allowed to eat them on Yantav. Now, if this gzeira exists, maybe we should not be able to eat it because of this problem of the egg born on that day. Finding finished eggs inside a female chicken is not something that's shchiach. It's not something that is common. Chazal have a rule, something that doesn't occur very often, they don't make a gzeira on. And Rav Yosef Omar, now Rav Yosef now goes back to our Mishnah, that why, according to Beis Hillel, is a beitzah that is noiled on Yantav aser, gzeir mishum peres anoishrim. You have a fruit tree in your backyard, and there are fruit that fell off the tree on Yantav. They're aser b'achila. So similarly, eggs that sort of fall from the chicken are similar to fruit falling from a tree. We don't allow you to eat it because, again, you might think you could pluck the fruit off the trees directly. Abai will give us why peres hanoshrim are asur. But Rav Yosef is telling us that the gzeira, that the reason Beis Hillel does not allow you to eat an egg laid on Yantav is because of peres hanoshrim. Okay.
Does that mean, Ernie, that is peres hanoshrim because it fell on Yantav?
Yes.
So that means that if you go out in the field and you say, oh my gosh, look, all these apples have fallen off my tree. I'm going to go now be makabel Yantav. You can go back on Yantav and pick them off the ground and eat them?
No, I'm saying if the fruit fell erev Yantav and you picked them up, that's not a problem.
No, let's say, meaning is this mashma that you have to know the fruit fell on Yantav in order for it to be muksa? But
yes.
If you know the fruit fell before Yantav, even if you haven't harvested it or whatever, you can still go out in the field on Yantav and pick it up and eat it? Unless
you have another isser that we're not covering. But if you know for sure you saw the fruit fall yesterday, so you could go out the next day and take it and eat it. Why not?
Okay, just checking.
What about the
gzeira, Kenny, the gzeira is peres that fall on Yantav. And we'll learn tomorrow why. Now, I have surgery tomorrow morning at 7:30. So we're going to have to learn like at 4:30 in the afternoon, like we normally do.
All right.
Okay.
What about the chaya regarding Kisi Adam? Is the chaya talking about it was Muchan before Shabbos when they talked about Kisi Adam? Is that what the Mishna says? We assume that the chaya was, as we talk about the Kisi Adam, you're not prepared. But is the chaya prepared before Yantav, or he found it on Yantav?
Yeah, but you're not allowed to trap an animal on Yantav. And
by itself. Let's say but
you're allowed to
prepare it ahead of time.
You have to designate it for food. But you're allowed to shech on Yantav. So you have your chay in your backyard. You have your deer in your backyard.
So we knew it. It was captured already before Yantav.
You can't capture it on Yantav. Can't capture it on Yantav.
No, I know. So that's right. So it was muchan before Yantav.
Why can't you capture it on Yantav if you're going to eat it?
Because it's Seder. It's in a different Av Malacha.
You can't do that on Yantav even though you know it's Ochel Nefesh? It's not the same as Shmita?
You can't hunt. You can't fish or hunt or trap. It's one of the Av Malachas on Shabbos. Yantav has the same one. Yantav has all the same Av Malachas except for Heter Ochel Nefesh. And Seder is not overridden as a Heter Ochel Nefesh. You're allowed to shecht, but you're not allowed to trap.
So, which means you had it what it was yours beforehand.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. It was muchan beforehand. That's why you could the shiloh's on Kisei Adam and not on the Seder.
Shiloh's on the Kisei Adam.
Yeah. Okay.